Harlequin Audio is proud to bring you An Heir Fit for a King by Abby Green, a Harlequin Presents novel, with bonus novella, Christmas at the Castello, by Amanda Cinelli. Performed by Saskia Maarleveld. Chapter 1. Leila Verughese was just wondering morosely to herself what would happen when her dwindling supplies of perfume ran out completely, when out of the corner of her eye she spotted something and turned to look, glad of the distraction to her maudlin thoughts. It was a sleek black car, pulled up outside her small House of Leila perfume shop, the shop she'd inherited from her mother on the Place Vendôme in Paris. When she took a closer look, she saw a veritable fleet of sleek black cars. The lead one had flags flying on the bonnet, but Leila couldn't make out what country they were from, even though she'd spent most of her life identifying the glamorous comings and goings from the exclusive Ritz Hotel across the square. A man hopped out of the front car, clearly a bodyguard of some sort, with an earpiece in his ear. He looked around before opening the back door, and Leila's eyes widened when she saw who emerged, as if they had to widen purely to be able to take him in better. It was a man, unmistakably and unashamedly a man, which was a ridiculous thing to think. One was either a man or a woman after all. But it was as if his very masculinity reached out before him like a crackling energy. He uncoiled to a height well over 6 feet, towering over the smaller, blockier man beside him. Powerfully built, with broad shoulders and a long black overcoat. He looked as if he was about to come towards Leila's shop, when he stopped suddenly. And Leila saw a moment of irritation cross his face, before he turned back to talk to someone who had to be in the back of the car. A wife? A girlfriend? He went and put a big hand on the roof of the car as he consulted the person inside. Leila caught a glimpse of a long length of bare-toned thigh and a flash of blonde hair. And then the man straightened again and began striding towards the shop, flanked by his minders. It was only now that Leila even registered his face. She'd never seen anything so boldly beautiful in all her life. Dark olive skin, dark enough to be Arabic, high cheekbones and a sensual mouth. It might have been pretty if it hadn't been for the deep-set eyes, strong brows, and even stronger jaw, which had clenched now, along with that look of irritation. He had short hair, dark, cut close to his skull, which had the same beautiful masculine shape as his face. Shock held Leila still for a long moment as he got closer and closer. For a second, just before the shop door opened, his eyes caught hers, and she had the strangest notion of a huge, sleek bird of prey swooping down to pick her up in his talons and carry her away. The dark-haired shop assistant behind the glass of the shop barely impinged on Alix Saint Croix's consciousness as he strode to the door. Surprise me. His mouth tightened. If he'd been able to say that the previous night had been pleasurable, he might have been more inclined to surprise his lover. He was a man who was not used to obeying the demands of anyone else, and the only reason he was indulging Carmen's sudden whim for perfume was because he was all too eager to get away from her. She'd arrived in his suite the previous evening, and their subsequent lovemaking had been adequate. Alix had found himself wondering when was the last time he'd been so consumed with lust, or by a woman, that he'd lost his mind in pleasure. Never, a little voice had whispered as his lover had sauntered from the bed to the bathroom, making sure all her assets were displayed to best advantage. Alix had been bored, and because women seemed to have a seventh sense designed purely to detect that, his lover had become very uncharacteristically compliant and sweet. So much so that it had set Alix's teeth on edge. And after a day of watching waif-thin models prancing up and down a catwalk, he was even more on edge. But, as his advisor had pointed out when he'd grumbled to him on the phone earlier, "This is good, Alix. It's helping us lull them into a false sense of security. They believe you have nothing on your agenda but the usual round of socializing and modelizing." Alix did not like being considered a modelizer, and he pushed open the door to the shop with more force than was necessary. finally registering the shop assistant, who was looking at him with a mixture of shock and awe.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?